Hello and welcome back to Midwest Motoring. Today we've got in the shop our Austin-Healey. You've seen it before, and I've probably mentioned in the past I love Austin-Healeys. I mean, who doesn't? But one of the issues, especially with the earlier ones, is that when you step on the brake pedal, nothing really happens. They're terrible. In fact, I've said before, this is probably by a long way the worst car that I've ever driven. They're hot, they're cramped, they're not particularly fast, they don't handle well, they're generally unsafe, and you can fit half a loaf of bread in it, and that's about all of your luggage space. So they're terrible, but it is my favorite car that I've ever owned. And so, you know, I guess on that basis, I'm crazy. We're all crazy. If you're watching this channel, you're crazy too. Anyway, so one of the things that we can address now, though, is the brakes. And you used to be able to get a kit for just the later big Healeys. The BJ8, that's what everything is available for. If you have a TR6, you're well catered for. If you had a Mini Cooper, good God, you could rebuild it with pretty much anything. They're like Legos. But for the earlier Healeys, there wasn't really a whole lot you could do short of converting a whole bunch of parts and putting it on from a later Healey. So nowadays, though, there is one. And here it is. This is Moss part number 586702, if you care, if you've got an early Healey. And what we have here is basically a completely bolt-on and completely, therefore, removable. I'll just show you one of them here. Set of brake calipers. These are 4-pot calipers instead of the 2-pot ones, and to help increase the brake effectiveness, of course I didn't cut that tape, as I was saying, so that they can actually stop the car. They have a much larger pad surface. Comes with some stickers, of course. It's another one of those unboxing videos that I have always said that I never really liked unboxing videos, but that's okay. It isn't so much an unboxing as it is a review here. There we go. Comes with a new set of brake pads. They are larger surface area on them. You've got more pistons on the calipers, and so in theory, for the same amount of pedal pressure, this should be able to improve the force on the brakes. So really good looking brake kit, first of all, but one of the questions I've always had, is it worth it to pay the money to install one of these things? I mean, again, it's kind of a little bit over $1,000. If this isn't actually going to increase the braking performance of the car by a reasonable margin, not worth the money. And so that's what I'm going to test for you guys. So first, I'm just going to install it on the car. I want to make sure everything fits. I'm going to go ahead and change out the brake hoses, make sure that it's safe, installs properly. I'll film that so that you can kind of get an idea for what the installation looks like, because we're here in the shop. But then I'm going to take the brakes back off. I'm going to put the original calipers back on. And the reason I'm going to do that is because tomorrow morning I'm going to be leaving for the Waumandee Time Trials in Waumandee, Wisconsin. It's an annual event, used to be hosted by the Minnesota Austin-Healey Club. But basically, if you don't know, they block off a couple-mile stretch of road, put up some hay bales for some chicanes, and send out one car at a time. It's got to be older than a certain age. One car at a time, and fastest time up the track wins. Kind of a fun event. My wife and I like to go to it. I'm not going to admit to losing to her time every single year. She's a maniac driver, okay? She has a racing history and I don't. But anyway, I'm not bitter at all. But anyway, what we're going to do is, aside from not letting her drive because I'll lose, what we're going to do is I'm going to put the original brakes on the car. We're going to go for a couple of runs up the hill, get the times for those, and then I'm going to go back to the paddock. I'm going to take the original brakes off. I'm going to put these on the Healey, and then we're going to go for a few more runs. And we're going to do a comparison and see, is it actually better at stopping? I could report back on pedal feel, but I mean, that sort of thing's largely subjective, right? So I'll tell you my thoughts on it, but you know, you might have a different experience. Time up a hill, you know, if you do enough laps, that's actually useful information. So we're going to do some legitimate testing with this and see if it actually improves performance. All right, now, if you're going to remove a caliper, it's actually easier if you get the lines out of the way, because then you will be able to use a wrench and actually fit it on the two nuts that you need to get off. Also, you could generally rotate the, turn the steering wheel in the opposite direction of whichever way you're working. The only reason I can't do that is because I've got the tire on the other side and it's hitting the lift, so I've got limited workspace here. Okay, on a BT7, there are two studs that go through. That's what holds this bracket on, and the brake line, the flexible brake line, will plug in here, the hard end on the other side of that. That's a trick, by the way, old one. If you need more leverage, put a wrench on it, hook another wrench onto the end, now you've got a longer lever on it. Also a very easy trick, just get a hammer and go whack. That tends to work pretty well too. That's it. That's all that holds it on. Now, if you still have the line that's attached to it, that's okay. You can remove a caliper that way. Sometimes it's important if you need to get the brake disc off and you're not changing the caliper. Just don't suspend it by the line. You want to get a wire coat hanger or something, hang it up from the shock, and then that way you're not stressing the flexible line at all. Okay, now again, this time I am just test fitting it. So I'm not going to route the brake line in, and I'm not going to bleed it. And the reason, there's two. First of all, it'll make a mess then when I pull it back off, and right now it's nice and clean, so I don't have to worry about that. What I do want to make sure of is a couple of things here. First of all, that the threads work, which they do. And then secondly, and this is an important note, if you compare this to the caliper that was on the car, the spot here where the pipe goes in is just barely higher than this bolt, and here it's like a ½ inch difference. And what that effectively means is that on the original caliper, this pipe is going to be down here, and on this one it's up here. So it's not going to make any difference in terms of bolting into the caliper, but it will make a difference where this lands. So when I switch to the other caliper, I'm going to have to try and bend this line a little bit to get this to line up and fit. You may end up needing to remake this line, so it's something that, again, you should be prepared to do, but I don't think you'd have to. I think you could probably get away with just sort of bending this. So, and even in a pinch, just don't use the bracket to hold the flex line. I don't like that idea, but yeah, no, better to make a new line. So anyway, just be prepared for that. You're going to have to do a little bit of modification because this doesn't line up exactly. But in terms of where it fits, it will bolt on exactly the same way, or it should anyway. So I'm just going to check the bolt holes are there. Just get the bolts seated here. Okay, now one other thing that you're supposed to be aware of is they want you in the instructions to have the brake disc centered inside the calipers so that the pistons have an even travel on both sides and so that you could fit in a new set of pads. And this looks like it is close, but not exactly. So you may need to shim it. A couple of washers is all you need. Just, something like this. Just put that between the caliper and the point where it mounts on to force it in one direction or another. And in this case, it needs to move a little bit inside, so I'll be taking care of that. And actually, before I go bolting this together and putting on the other caliper, the other thing that I want to check is that the wheels fit. That'd kind of ruin my day if it doesn't. Well, looks like we've got room. I'm going to tighten that down just in case. Yeah, okay, so it looks like we've got space. Anyway, all right, so just test fitted the wheel. We know that it'll spin around the caliper. We know that we are going to have to stretch or move this a little bit. Don't brake fluid on my lift here. We've got a new line, which is good. We know everything's going to be loose, also good. And if I were putting in the pads, an old trick is put a little bit of brake grease just on the back of the surface of the pads, not the part that actually does the braking, before you slide it in. And then make sure that you've got, you may need shims on the other side, otherwise you're not going to be able to fit in the rear pad. And that's it. Bleed the brakes when you're done, and you should be good to go. So cannot stress enough, make sure that you test it. Pump the brakes a few times after you get in the car. Make sure that the pedal stays firm. Hold it down forcibly for, I don't know, maybe a minute or so. Make sure that the pedal isn't sinking. If it is, you've got a leak somewhere. Stop, investigate where that is. But if it doesn't, go for a couple of drives, make sure that nothing feels out of the ordinary, check the fluid frequently, and if everything works, you should be good to go. So I'm excited to see how these are going to work out. I'm going to put the old ones back on, though, because again, I want to do a back-to-back test. So my goal here was to make sure that the lines are new, that all the bolts are loose, and that I've got proper fit so that I don't have to do that on the ground at a hill climb in a farm field. So much easier to do on the lift, and then I'll just use a jack and some jack stands at the field because I know it'll be easy to do the rest. So that should be it for now. So let's wrap this up. That is it. It is exactly the same. Changing a caliper is easy, and I test fit it. I mean, these are literally a bolt-on application. So from the ease of an installation standpoint, wonderful. If you need calipers, that's not a terrible way to go. So tomorrow then, we're going to take it up to Waumandee. We're going to see if these brakes actually perform better. And I'll report back on how they feel. I will report back on whether the time uphill drops. We're going to do a couple of runs, and we'll kind of take an average just to give you an idea, so that way we kind of reduce the possibility that, oh, I was just faster the second time around. So we'll do a few times up and a few times up with the different brakes. We'll see how it works out. So here goes nothing. Okay, Jackson, you got to tell everybody where we are. Not even looking. There you go. Okay, Dan. Just after the snacks.
No.
Okay, we are at Waumandee now, and I'm going to briefly introduce you to somebody that does not have time to talk to us. This is Tom. Hi, Tom.
Howdy. Nice to meet you.
Tom, we're going to talk to you a little bit later if you've got some time, but I
You
just
bet.
wanted to.
Driver's meeting starts right now.
Without this guy, there would not be a Waumandee Time Trials, so thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay guys, I am here in the Healey. We are at the bottom of the hill. There's a few cars in front of us yet to go, so we're about to be making our first run. I'm going to turn on the GoPro, let you see that. These are the stock brakes right now, so we're going to switch. We're going to go out to the other brakes, but we're on the stock ones, so let's give it a test. Okay, so when I had assembled these, this is just a quick addendum. There were a couple of roll pins. Turns out those are superfluous to the kit, so it's important to make sure that you actually open the part that says assembly bits included. Anyway, there's these couple of bars. You see there are 2 holes. Those are for these R-clips. And it comes also with 2 spring clips. I've got them installed on this side here. These are a little bit tricky to install. What I did that worked pretty well was you get 1 pin in, probably the bottom one's a little bit easier. This goes like this on this side, like this over here. And what I did that was successful was I hooked the bottom bit around it first, press it back, and while it's pressed back, then push the top pin in so it can't fly back out. It will be easier if you get a screwdriver, and I promise you it will happen a couple of times where it slips off the screwdriver and flies out. So just be aware of that. Make sure that you have a working space so that you can actually catch it and find it when it flies out. But once that's in, you're good to go. The other thing that could be an issue for you is air in the system, because these calipers are delivered with no brake fluid in them. And so when you put them on for the first time, you may have an air bubble, because the path goes in through the brake line here, all the way through the bottom, all the way back up. There's plenty of places for bubbles to kind of get trapped in here. And so a suggestion is, before you put it on the car, hold the caliper kind of sideways and bleed it that way. That you can move it around and kind of get all of the air out. So if you're having trouble getting the air out, that could be a good solution for you. So what's the verdict? Okay, well, like so many things, we're going to do kind of a cop-out answer. It depends, right? If you have a car that's got rust holes and the steering's not really connected to anything, the tires are old, please put your money there first. Make it safe. The brakes that come with the car will, in fact, stop it as long as they're in good shape. If you are driving your car maybe just to a show or in a parade now and again, you know, it really just kind of depends. If you're driving it on and off a trailer, you don't need better brakes for driving it on and off a trailer. However, if you are like me, I take my car to the office. I drive it between different states. I can go distances. I can drive it frequently. Yeah, in that case, I really do think that the brake kit is worth it. I would put it on again if I had the choice. And so that's kind of an opinion. Now, some pitfalls that you want to avoid. You want to make sure that the rotors are either machined or replaced. They're really not that expensive on a Healey, and it's the same amount of work. You've got to take the rotor off. So my recommendation is just to get new ones. You want to make sure that the flexible brake lines are replaced. I did that on mine. If you are more concerned about pedal feel, then instead of using the rubber flexible lines, go ahead and find yourself a set of the stainless steel braided ones. That's going to give you a little bit better of a pedal feel as well. You want to make sure that the brakes in the back have also been done and that they're adjusted properly. Rear brakes that are out of adjustment will ruin your brakes, and, well, it'll ruin your braking ability, and it'll make the pedal feel soft. So go through that stuff first. But if you're at that point where you're driving your car and you say, okay, the brakes I know are working correctly, and I could just use some more stopping power, you can in fact get it. Now here's where the science comes into it. In those Waumandee Time Trial runs up the hill, it averaged 2.5 seconds quicker using the new brakes than it did using the original Healey brakes. The only thing that I changed was the calipers and the pads that came with it. So it had the same rotors, the same brake lines. 2.5 seconds isn't a whole lot in a 3-minute 20 run up the hill, but given that most of the time you're on the gas, not on the brakes, it does make a difference. The pedal feel is roughly the same, but I think a little bit stiffer, and I can tell you that, at least subjectively, I feel like the car is stopping quicker for the same amount of pedal pressure. And so I do feel a difference. I think that the brakes are effective, and I like that the kit is available without having to take apart the axles and everything else and swap in a bunch of different parts. So I would recommend, yes, I think it is worth it. So I've got it, I drive it, I'm not as worried about it, and I have a bit more confidence in the brakes. So there you go. I hope that's helpful to somebody out there. If you guys have questions, post them in the comments below. If you have a different experience, let us know how that went. So thanks a lot. I'll see you next time.